The Cinderella story is over, man. Right? They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins.
For years, especially since I've been watching college football, Oregon has been one of those teams that have always been good, but they can never get the job done. Kind of like Penn State under James Franklin, Ohio State under Ryan Day, or Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin. Okay, who am I kidding? Ole Miss has never been that close under Lane Kiffin. But you get the point. Oregon has always been one of those teams that has the talent to compete for a national title, but they've never won one. They came close in 2011 against Auburn and another time in 2015 against Ohio State. Then you had that year where Dennis Dixon got hurt, where many people believe if that doesn't happen, a championship trophy is already in Eugene as I record this video. But instead, they're labeled as a team that has all these jerseys but no championships. You heard the joke that the logo on the helmet matched the number of championships that they have. But this season is a little bit different. In Dan Lanning's third year, the Ducks are undefeated, college football is wide open, and Oregon has been ranked number 1 in what I believe has been 3 straight weeks. And with them improving every year under Dan Lanning, many people believe that this is finally the year that Oregon breaks through and win that national title. So today I'll be focusing on the rise of Dan Lanning and Oregon football and how he made them national title contenders. Before we talk about Dan Lanning, I want to go through a brief history of Ducks coaches since the 2000s. Now I know Dan Lanning has Oregon rolling right now, but Oregon is no stranger to winning seasons. The coach that introduced Oregon to winning was Mike Bellotti, as he had the first 10 and 11 win season in Oregon history. Bellotti coached the Oregon Ducks from the start of the 1995 season to the end of the 2008 season, where he had them finish at top 10 in the AP poll 3 times, and he had a 116 win to 55 loss record. Bellotti had 4 10 or more win seasons at Oregon, and many people believe in that 2007 season, if Dennis Dixon doesn't get hurt, Oregon has a chance to win a national title. Now, he wasn't a consistent 10 or 11 win, even 9 win coach, as he had some 8 win seasons, 7 win seasons, even a 5 win season. The coach that introduced Oregon to consistently winning 10 plus wins was Chip Kelly. Now, Chip Kelly was an OC at Oregon before he was a head coach with the potent and spread offense attack. Kelly and the Ducks would gain national recognition as on October 31st of his first season, they would defeat number 5 USC. At the end of the season, Oregon was 10-3. In Chip Kelly's first year, they made it to the Rose Bowl, but they lost, but he did win Coach of the Year. Chip Kelly's second season, where Oregon gained really a lot of notoriety, and their offense looked like a Chip Kelly offense. Oregon this season, in every regular season game but one, will score over 37 points, including a couple of games where they had 50, 60, and 70 points. And if you don't know, Oregon did make it to the national title game this season, but the problem is they ran into Cam Newton Auburn, where Auburn would beat them by a field goal. And listen, I don't care what any Oregon fan says, Michael Dyer was not down. Now after that, Chip Kelly would coach 2 more seasons where he would win a Rose Bowl and a Fiesta Bowl, going 12-2 and 12-1. Kelly would end his Oregon Ducks coaching tenure with a 46-7 record, and the underrated thing about him was that he never lost a game to rivals Oregon State or Washington. Kelly will win 10 or more games every year of his career. He had 2 Rose Bowl appearances, a Fiesta Bowl appearance, and a national championship game appearance, and he won Coach of the Year twice. Kelly will also have Oregon finish top 10 in the rankings in all but 1 year. And there was already talks about Kelly getting NFL contracts, and since it was already sanctioned, that was rumored against Oregon and Kelly, he decided to go to the Eagles. After Kelly left, they decided to hire the offense coordinator under him, Mark Helfrich. Helfrich will move away from his predecessor's blur offense and move to a more balanced attack that will have an efficient pass game and an efficient way to score points and still break offensive records. In the first season under Helfrich, Oregon will lose the first game to an unranked opponent since 2008, but they end up going 11-2. They also will make it to the Alamo Bowl where they beat Texas 30-7. Oregon peaked in the Helfrich era in the second season, as for the first time in school history, they won 13 games. In that season, they will score over 38 points in every game but one during the regular season, including some games where they had like 40 and 50 points, even a 60-point game. For the first time in Oregon history this season, they will have their first Heisman Trophy winner in Marcus Mariota, and they reached the first ever college football playoffs. Now in the Rose Bowl of college football playoffs, they will actually beat the previous year Heisman Trophy winner Jameis Winston. Too bad they ran into third string quarterback Cardale Jones, who was leading Ohio State to their national championship. They would lose that game 42-20, making it their second national championship loss in the decade. At the beginning of Helfrich's third season, they would experience their worst loss at Alton, as they would have a 42-point loss to Utah. Oregon will start out 3-3, and they'll fall out of the top 25 for the first time since 2009. After this though, they would experience 6 straight wins, including a couple wins over ranked teams, and they would jump back into the top 25 and they would play number 11 TCU in the Alamo Bowl. Oregon did jump out to a 31-0 lead against TCU, but after Vernon Adams' injury, TCU would come back and win 47-41. The next season is where the downfall for Oregon could have started, as they went 4-8 and Helfrich was not the coach after that. After that, they would hire Willie Taggart, who went 7-5, and it's probably a good thing that he didn't stay because we all know he brought down Florida State. And during this time, we all know Oregon also had some of the best jerseys, including Nebraskans that wearing the jerseys. After Taggart, they would hire Cristobal, who was there for 4 seasons. Cristobal would go 35-13, make it to a bowl game every season, and they might have made it to the college football playoffs in 2019 if Arizona State doesn't beat them. Cristobal did recruit some of the highest rated Oregon football recruits during his time. He got Kayvon Thibodeau, Ty Thompson, Justin Flo, and Noah Sewell. Of course, Cristobal, underachieving self, went to Miami, and then Oregon hired Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning was a little bit different from the coaches of the past, as he wasn't the offensive coordinator that Chip Kelly or Mark Helfrich was, and he wasn't the recruiter, or at least he wasn't seen as a recruiter, that Mario Cristobal was. The good thing about Lanning, though, is that he came from a winning culture, as he coached under Kirby Smart at Georgia, and he was an assistant at Alabama under Nick Saban and when Kirby Smart was there. After being hired, Lanning would bring in Kenny Dillingham as an OC and Tosh Lupoy as the DC. Also, after being hired, he recruited some key transfers in his first recruiting class, like Bucky Irvin, Bo Nix, and Christian Gonzalez. Lanning's first game at Oregon, they had to play his former team in Georgia, and it did not go well. Georgia beat them 49-3. Honestly, it wasn't a close game after the first half. Now, for the rest of the season, Oregon went 9-3, and it was highlighted by wins over BYU, who was ranked, UCLA, who was ranked, and Utah, who was ranked. The only problem is that they had some key wins, but they also had some key losses, like how they lost to rivals Oregon State and Washington. And even though Dan Lanning was a defensive coordinator for Georgia, it didn't seem like the Ducks had a good defense this year, as if you had an adequate offense against the Ducks this season, then you was bound to score at least 24 points. In the offseason going into the 2023 season, they did have some key departures like Christian Gonzalez and Noah Sewell, who decided to go to the NFL. But they were bringing in talented guys like Jordan Birch, Kyrie Jackson, and Ted Johnson. Add that onto the talent they were returning in Bo Nix, Bucky Irvin, and some other key players, they were seen as a top team in the nation, as they were ranked number 15 in the preseason polls. Now, Oregon will start the season off 5-0, going into the key matchup against Washington in a top 10 matchup. Unfortunately for Oregon, they will lose this game 36-33, but this could have been avoided. See, Dan Lanning decided to go for it on 4th down 3 times this game in Washington territory, where he could just kick 3 field goals. But instead of winning by 3, Oregon lost by 3. Oregon will win out for the rest of the regular season, beating teams like Utah and Oregon State that were ranked, and Bo Nix was a Heisman candidate. Now in the Pac-12 championship game, they had another date with Washington where they would lose once again. And if Oregon would have won this game, then they would have made it to the college football playoffs. And I almost forgot to mention that in the offseason going into this season, Kenny Dillingham left them and Will Stein was the offense coordinator. Now, after the 2023 season, there was talks about Dan Lanning potentially being the next coach at Alabama, but he shot those rumors down as he reassured his team that he was going to be the coach at Oregon for a long time. And that's a pretty underrated thing about Dan Lanning, as coaches like Chip Kelly, Willie Taggart, and Mario Cristobal have used Oregon as stepping stools. Once again, going into the 2024 season, Dan Lanning was able to get some talent in the recruiting classes. He landed 5-star Elijah Rushing, and he had the number 2 ranked transfer portal class, highlighted by guys like Dylan Gabriel, Jabbar Muhammad, Evan Stewart, and more. And in my opinion, if you was to ask me, Oregon should have opened up as national title favorites entering this season. So far this season, Oregon is undefeated. They beat all their tough opponents such as Boise State, and they beat top 5 team Ohio State. And the rest of their regular season schedule is a cupcake walk. So they control their own destiny, and they have a good chance of getting the number 1 seed in the college football playoffs as long as they win the Big Ten championship game. It really seems like Dan Lanning is going to be the coach for the Oregon Ducks for a long time, and he won't be jumping ship to the NFL or to another college football program anytime soon. Hopefully Oregon is able to stay healthy, and if they do, I believe they're going to win the national title. But that's all for this video, and until next time, I'm out. Peace.